Hey guys, you're listening to the We Could Make That podcast, and I'm your host, Andrea. On this show, I interview inspiring food entrepreneurs and makers to get to the heart of how and why they started their businesses. In each episode, I dig into their backgrounds, motivations, and passions to decode the lessons we can each take back to our own kitchens and lives. Let's get started. Aaron Glassman is in the hot seat today. He's the founder of Macaccino and the owner of the Golden Mean Cafe in Los Angeles, where he's calling in from today. So be aware you may hear some background restaurant noises throughout the early part of this episode. Back to his product, Macaccino, which is made of roasted maca, a root that grows in the highest altitudes of the Andes Mountains. Maca is an adaptogen, and its health benefits run the gamut from increased energy to improved mood and sleep and stamina to enhanced memory. Back in the day, maca was reserved exclusively for Inca warriors, and Peruvian women have been known to take maca to balance hormones and increase fertility. I started drinking maca after I met Aaron at a natural food conference, and I've been a Macaccino convert ever since. Don't get me wrong, I love coffee. A lot. In fact, in a few weeks, I'm bringing one of my favorite coffee growers onto the show to sing the praises of it. That said, I've got to admit that the caffeine in coffee was making me feel less than ideal in the mornings. So when I have it, I'm embarrassed to say I now drink decaf. But maca has bridged the gap for me. It still gets me going without the upset stomach and jitters. Plus, it satiates my desire to hold on to a warm cup of something. I've realized a huge part of my addiction to coffee was actually just my addiction to a morning ritual. This show is packed with interesting information, like why drinking coffee first thing in the morning isn't good for you, why women in particular may benefit from switching up their beverage of choice, and how our modern diet is making our bodies more acidic, including why that's really, really terrible for us. We take a winding path to get to a lot of this goodness, but bear with me. This show is definitely worth the listen all the way through. Aaron, hi there. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hey, Andrea. How are you?
I'm doing well. We were just talking. It's been a pretty rough week here in New York, Thursday after the election, but other than that, things are going quite well.
Well, that's a big other than that.
This is true. This is true. So I thought a good place to start would be with your background and a little bit about where you're from and your family.
Wow. Okay. Well, my background is got a lot of different facets to it. I have played music all my life. I'm a songwriter. I've studied music. I've been in bands. I've had a music education company for children. So I've done a lot of different entrepreneurial things over the years. I had a mobile video store back east 28 years ago where we delivered and dropped off, picked up VHS videos. I have opened up a plant-based restaurant here in Santa Monica called Golden Mean Natural Foods 8 years ago. And that's where Macaccino was born out of. Macaccino came out of the plant-based restaurant here. And so I am a musician, an entrepreneur. I have done professional acting and writing. And I also have been speaking about conscious development and expanding our heart centers for years and years. So I am kind of a jack of many trades.
Okay. Yeah, younger viewers might be, or listeners might be thinking, what's a VHS?
Well, way back when, in the beginning times. Let's go even back to beta.
Yeah.
No, the truth is that when I was 16 years old, I had the coolest job on the planet. VHS and beta stores were just starting to open up. And I worked at the first VHS store pretty much in the North New England place. And they were tapes that people would put into these VHS machines to watch movies. And that was something that we had never, ever, been able to do, is like have control of renting these cool new movies and playing them in our house. So my job was to watch all these movies so I could tell the customers which movies were great.
Wow. Do you remember the first VHS that you ever watched?
The first VHS, it was beta in school, like they were these huge beta machines. But let's see. Yeah, one of the first VHS movies I watched was Excalibur. That was probably 1980, 81 maybe. And I remember watching that a few times, Excalibur in the store. Because nobody came in. Not many people
had no idea what it
machines.
was. What's that weird store?
They did. Slowly, one or two people a day would come in, and I would just spend half an hour telling them about the movies. So I was watching movies and getting paid. Something like $3 an hour, $4 an hour.
Are you still a big movie buff?
I love movies. I really do. And I've written movies. I love what the opportunity of what the visual medium gives us an opportunity to experience. I feel, however, like we need to really start going to a whole other level with our cinematic experience. So movies these days, they tend to rarely move me. So I know that the future of film is really going to change. It's going to become a much more multidimensional experience, utilizing all different aspects of technology and visual and music, sound, and light. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, we're starting to see that, right? Even in the virtual reality. I was over at the Samsung, I guess their retail location over in the meatpacking district the other day, and they have all the virtual reality headsets that people can try on, and you can sit in a faux roller coaster, and the chairs move, and it's a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, we're gonna want to actually become inside the images that we are watching, like virtual reality, but more. I think people are hungry for a visceral experience, and I think that experience is going to be one that is more moving to them and elevating them and expanding them rather than contracting them and scaring them so much.
Do you think that food plays a role in that? I
know food plays a role in it, and that's why I do the plant-based restaurant, and I'm doing Macaccino. And we kind of took the day, just my staff for Macaccino yesterday, and we all sat down, and I knew we weren't going to be able to really be productive. Everyone had really sad faces on. They were disappointed in the outcome, and I knew we had to talk about what happened and just kind of move through the feelings that were coming up. And, I was telling them that everything we do is not about selling a product, because I'm not interested in just selling a product to make $1. I'm interested in creating products or creating just period things that can have an opportunity to elevate humanity, including myself. And that's what plant-based diet for me is and what Macaccino means to me.
When did you start having that feeling of, I read you're very into sustainability as well, and you have a focus on that, and obviously the plant-based diet. When did you really start playing around with these concepts and getting familiar with them?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I came out to LA 27 years ago, acting at the time from the East Coast. And I was busting my ass to just get a stupid Taco Bell commercial or going out on endless beer commercials and praying I get a line in Beverly Hills 90210. And when that got old, I left my life in LA and I went and traveled the world. I saved up a bunch of money. I worked doubles in restaurants and I saved up enough to live on $30 a day and backpacked around the world for about 4 months. So that's when I had a kind of complete transformation as to who I thought I was, and began realizing there was a whole lot more to who I am, as there is with everybody. And I became interested in things that were of a heart-centered way of being. And I began doing a lot of meditation, a lot of yoga, and all of that stuff. So, everybody asks me, like, when did you become vegan, vegetarian, or, for the most part, I'm vegan. If I had a little honey or cheese or something, I don't go crazy. But when did you stop eating meat and all of that? And I just tell people it all moves together as one. It was never something I woke up and decided today I'm going to be a vegetarian. The more I got into a heart-centered way of living, a lifestyle choice, through meditation, through yoga, through, expanding my awareness in many different subjects and all of that, that expansion changes your physical body. And then your physical body doesn't require the same kind of fuel or energy that you're putting in, and it actually can shift. So depending upon what you want to experience energetically is what you're going to fuel your body in. So I never, went from one day to the next, but slowly I started losing my interest in eating meat, chicken or fish and all of that. And I became happy eating plant-based foods.
When you say heart-centered, what does that mean to you?
That's a good question. Yeah, so when I say heart-centered, so the name of my restaurant's Golden Mean Natural Foods. And golden mean basically means the median between the two extremes. And that is my absolute joy, is talking about, writing about, creating not only products, but art or expressing what the golden mean is. And the golden mean is a term that was coined by a Greek philosopher, Aristotle, thousands of years ago. And it kind of shows mathematically, scientifically, how all things in nature and creation are connected through this mathematical equation called the golden mean or the golden ratio. Anyway, so what heart-centered is when we are really bringing together the two extremes of our physical experience here on planet Earth. And what I mean by that is I believe there's a higher self, that we're multidimensional, and that all energy actually operates on many levels at the same time. So I believe there's many different layers to our physical body. And as we bring together the higher aspects of our physical body with the kind of denser aspects of our physical body, it brings us into the heart center. And that's where we don't experience separation. And when we don't experience separation, we experience a much more expanded state. We become bigger energetically. We become more at peace because we're not resisting. We're not in fear. When we're heart-centered, we're present. And when we're present, we're connected to the breath. And when we're connected to the breath, we're able to live a heart-centered life. So what does that have to do with Macaccino? Well, good thing I asked. So this is the main thing. I'm not anti-coffee or anything like that, but a lot of our diet in the West here is the antithesis of what I'm talking about here. So first of all, caffeine is a stimulant. It's a narcotic, but it is a stimulant that it constricts our nervous system. It constricts energy. What it does is it tricks the body into thinking it has energy. It elevates heart rate, it elevates blood pressure, and it tricks actually tired signals in your brain to make you feel more alert and awake. But it's not actually producing and feeding your body. It's not actually creating real sustainable energy. It's tricking your body. So what Macaccino does and is actually feeding and nourishing the cells of your body, but it's also known as an adaptogen, which means it's a full body energetic. And it does this it is a natural stimulant. Maca root is a natural stimulant. It's been used for thousands of years in the Peru and Bolivia regions in the world of the Andes there. And it was used to be reserved just for Inca warrior kings, actually, because of its potency, of its power, its strength, virility, and its libido enhancement and all of that. So it's a powerful superfood energy that's known as to be an adaptogen. And an adaptogen is actually working with your body's metabolism to create real sustainable energy. It won't jack and spike you. It's really feeding your body through a whole amino acid profile, 18 aminos, healthy fatty acids, and loaded with vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients. So what that allows for us to do is have a meditation, a yoga practice, a more peaceful way of being, because it's not jacking you up into one extreme and then dropping you back down to the other extreme. It's actually fueling you in a more centered, energetic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I actually have not been drinking coffee now for about 6 months. And when I came across Macaccino at the Natural Expo fair that we both met at, we've been drinking it ever since. And I've actually really noticed a difference. And it does give you, it's a different kind of energy, right? It's
Yes.
not associated with like that stimulant kind of buzz, right? You're not going to be buzzing from maca, but it's a more consistent.
Some people do.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, some people do it. Every body is different, and every body has a different metabolism. I had somebody just have like 2 ounces of our black Macaccino, which is our deep roasted, more strong. And she said she felt she could, run around the track 100 times for hours. So it is different. But yes, address what you're saying, it is a different type of energy where you realize hours later, it's like, wow, I still feel like I can keep going, Is that kind of what you feel?
Yeah, definitely. And I also like that it's alkaline and not acidic. So for people who might not know why that's important, can you talk a little bit about just alkaline foods and drinks?
Absolutely. I really appreciate your questions. Well, I have the plant-based restaurant. So the more that we introduce plant-based diet into our daily diet routine, you are ingesting a more alkaline food source. And what that means, alkaline, is our body, our blood, is regulated through a pH balance. And that pH balance is what creates really a healthy cellular structure in our body. When our bodies become too acidic, the cellular structure gets weakened and the cells aren't strong, your immunity drops, and that's where you get prone to sickness. And if we look at the West and where we live and the diet we have, we know we're sick. I mean, we know obesity is a huge problem. We know processed foods. So all the things that are kind of have been the foundation of our diet here in the West are highly acidic, like frozen foods or soda or alcohol or white flours, sugars, meats. These are highly acidic foods. Caffeine, highly acidic. And these are kind of staples in our daily life. And that is creating a very high acidity in our blood, which is actually causing a weakness in our immunity. And it stops flow, actually, and it creates a stagnation where disease is really prevalent. So when we start really adding alkaline-based products or foods to our diet, we're balancing out our pH level to a healthy pH. Some people say that's around 7, 7.2, 8, whatever. But alkaline foods are more of plant-based. And when I say plant-based, that's vegetables, that's grains, that's beans, that's all the types of fruits and things like that are more alkaline. And Macaccino is alkaline, and it is non-acidic. So many people tell me I can't drink coffee anymore because I have acid reflux, or my stomach just starts to burn, or whatever it is. And Macaccino does help with immunity because it's alkaline and it's creating a healthy blood pH level.
And scientifically, or I guess biologically, it's better to drink Macaccino first thing in the morning because of the way that your body is naturally producing levels of cortisol. Is that correct?
Yeah. Harvard medical studies and many others actually came out with a great article a few months ago. Yeah, the worst time of day to have your first cup of coffee is in the morning between 5 and 8 a.m. And the reason that is because your body naturally wants to produce the hormone cortisol hormone, to get you awake and alert. The body knows that you need to wake up and be alert, and it all stems back from, obviously, survival days. So it's trying to actually get you energized and wake up. The problem is that when we drink coffee as the first thing, it can have an effect on those cortisol hormones. And what the effect, it can throw out the balance of hormonal levels in the body. And what caffeine does also is it builds an immunity. By drinking the caffeine, you start messing with the hormonal levels, and it actually builds a tolerance to the effects of caffeine. So people need more and more caffeine to get that high or that buzz that they want. And the more caffeine you're drinking, the more you're overtaxing your nervous system, your adrenals, the acidity, of course, you're losing bone density, all of the negative effects that caffeine has if you're really overdoing it. So the best time of day, if you're going to have a cup of coffee, is actually between 11 and 2, when your body naturally starts dropping naturally in its cortisol levels. So they say the best time actually is to wait until late morning, or early afternoon to have a cup of coffee. I personally have my Macaccino in the morning and I have another one at around 3, and I'm good for the day, and then I sleep great.
That was going to be one of my questions too. Does it disrupt sleep if you have it too late?
Well, it is a stimulant, and I don't recommend drinking it before you go to bed. I usually tell people, depending upon what time you go to bed, but if you had one up until six o'clock or whatever, it would, for most people, they find that they still sleep really well. And because actually maca root, which is Macaccino, has been shown to help balance hormonal levels, especially in women, you actually will see a better and a deeper, more restorative sleep. That is from what some studies have shown and what people have reported. I'm not making any of this up. You can read about it online. This has been around for, a long time, obviously in the regions of Peru, but it's also been in the States as a raw maca for, decades. But people who do start getting off coffee and drinking Macaccino, they find that their sleep is more restorative. And that's a huge health issue. The fact that we're so caffeinated in our Western, society is we are not getting that really deep restorative regenerative sleep that the body needs to maintain healthy immunity. And not only physically, but also psychologically. If we're not sleeping really well, there's no way we can experience that kind of heart-centered energy that we want to have more of on the planet, because you're really irritable, and when you're tired you're cranky and you're not as present.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think specifically for women, and the reason I stopped drinking coffee, even though I love coffee, is because it just started to make me feel terrible. I would have a cup of coffee, and for, I would say, a solid 4 or 5 months, I would think, no, it's not the coffee that made me feel that way. I just, my stomach's just upset, or I'm just feeling a little off, or whatever it was. And admittedly, the first few weeks not drinking coffee were really tough, right? You kind of go through the withdrawal symptoms, which are
Did you
an
have
obvious
headaches?
sign. I did for the first, I would say, 3 or 4 days. So that's an obvious sign.
Were you drinking Macaccino during it?
I wasn't. I didn't know about it yet.
Oh, okay. So to tell your listeners, like I said, I've been selling Macaccino for over 6.5 years here in Santa Monica in LA, and we're just getting nationwide now. But so I've heard a lot of testimonials, and if you get off coffee or start weaning yourself off coffee and are substituting it with Macaccino, they said, I didn't get headaches, and I'll tell you why. Is because Maca, opens up blood flow. It's actually opening and increasing blood flow and circulation. So it will, from what I've heard, help with the headaches and the real side effects of coming off the caffeine. That they said it was actually an easy transition as long as they were having their Macaccino. That's the truth.
All right. Well, if anyone's listening to this and thinking about getting off coffee and making the switch, you have to email or put it in the show notes that your experience, I guess, from
exactly.
From what happened.
I'd love to hear about that as well.
So,
yes,
go ahead. Yeah.
No, I mean, because I love that you were saying, especially for women, this is a really unique product because not only of its ability to help balance hormonal levels, and when we are able to have something that supports that, women have reported, and you can read about this online, is that it helps with menstrual symptoms. They experience less severity in their menstrual symptoms. Helps even with menopausal symptoms. It has been reported to really help clear up skin if there are people with a lot of acne because of the acidity that can happen, and because this is alkaline and it's helping regulate that hormonal levels, they've experienced a lot clearer, radiant skin, and all of those things that women really don't like about caffeine, which is the anxiety and the jitters and all of that. Macaccino doesn't have that. So it really does support, especially kind of the more feminine, energetic and body. But it also, it's also great, obviously, for men. A lot of people that are athletic take it and drink it because it really helps with their workouts, because it's really like having a nutrition shake, in lieu of your coffee break.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think everything that you're saying that the Macaccino helps with in terms of hormonal, the caffeine completely disrupts. So you're really kind of putting your body through a massive release of cortisol and insulin surges if your blood sugar is dropping when you're coming down off the caffeine, and depending what kind of sweeteners you're putting in it. So there's really just a whole cascade and plethora of reasons that caffeine is really not ideal for women.
Why do you think it's like on every corner?
Yeah, I mean, Starbucks, man. Starbucks just came in with it. And it's delicious. I will give it that. You know, there is something very comforting about having a
And
good
it's
cup of
addictive.
coffee. And it's
Yeah,
addictive.
and it's addictive.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Macaccino isn't addictive. It's not the same. So people say, if it's not caffeine, what is giving you the energy? And it's because maca there are so many other stimulants, but maca root is a powerful stimulant in itself. And it's got a huge, dense nutritional profile. But you see, what excites me is connecting, why coffee is so prevalent in our society, and, how we have such a large population in this country that suffers from, depression, disease, suffers from separation, anxiety. And I know that the diet is directly connected to all of those symptoms. And I believe, really, because I've literally put my money where my mouth is that if we can just balance out our diet, because it's not about never drinking coffee again. I'm not saying don't ever drink your coffee. I'm not saying don't ever eat meat. But we do have to come back into balance, which is the golden mean. We have to be able to recognize when we're living in an extreme where we are just so inundating our bodies with toxicity that we have to balance it out. And when we do start doing that, we realize there are great options where you don't have to sacrifice flavor, taste, the joy of whatever it is you're eating or drinking. And you're going to feel amazing, and you're going to feel so much happier. You're going to be able to feel like you can really be more centered and present, and that is how we change the world. It's a foundational, fundamental way of being that has to shift before we think anything else is going to change in the world. There's just no way.
Well, I think you make a really good point with the shifting piece. I mean, you look at what role coffee kind of plays in just society of being busy and always being on and being frazzled and having all of those things almost be a badge of honor right now.
Yeah.
You ask someone how they are and they say, good, really busy. And
Right.
That's almost, it's the new, I don't know, there's something in that is perpetuated by coffee and then happy hour and then just constantly this rat race really of going through all of the motions because we should be doing all these things to keep up.
That's exactly it. I mean, what you said is we don't want to be rats. I mean, we aren't rats. We're amazing beings, right? I mean, we say these things as kind of little sayings, but the meaning behind it is really important, I feel. I think that when I first came out to LA, something like 8 to 10 million people around the States were doing yoga. And now yoga is a mainstream, 45, 50 million people doing it. It's in every single gym and athletic center on every block almost in every major city and all of that. And that is because there is such a thirst and a hunger for presence and slowing down and connecting to the breath and to align the spine, which is your central nervous system, because we're literally dying without it. And I think we are going to have to stop and pause if we are going to create something new. And if we're not willing to stop in our lives, then nothing is going to change. Because with everything that changes, there has to be a time of planting the seed and nurturing the seed while it grows. And that's the importance of slowing down. And, I am busy and I am doing a lot, but I also make sure that I meditate every day and that I stop and that I'm actually out in nature and that I'm actually just taking time to just be present, because that's the foundation from which I can do things out in the world. But if we never do that, if we never stop, then just like a computer that's the fastest supercomputers, they crash. Just like those fast $100,000 Ferraris, they are high maintenance and they need a lot of tuning up or they break down a lot. Anything that is operating at such a high speed all of the time eventually dies very quickly, or it absolutely burns out. The hummingbird has the shortest lifespan of any bird. It's the fastest, but it also dies. It has the shortest lifespan. So that's just a fact. And I think we experience that because we have always felt that the outcome of our daily tasks and the accomplishments that are only measured through monetary gains or acquisition of material goods is our definition of success, we've bought into being on that hamster wheel. And there's nothing wrong with going after those things. But if it's out of balance and that's all we do, then we suffer from it. We literally do suffer from it. And I believe that there's nothing wrong with taking the time, to either do that kind of practice of breathing or sitting down and having a Macaccino. It just takes hot water and your favorite creamer and sweetener. We don't have them in Keurig pods because you're actually ingesting the actual powder itself. So it's just mixed in with hot water and your favorite creamer or sweeten it taste. And take time, 5 minutes, to be present with it and with your surroundings and the people you're with.
Absolutely. So I do have a question. So when I was living in Australia, we would go to the bulk stores and stock up on almonds and nuts and whatever else we needed. And for a while, they had a sign that the maca that they had been getting was not being harvested properly. And they didn't feel confident in the quality of it. And so I started doing a little bit more research on that. And I know you guys have to have your little warning there on the label about lead. So can you talk a little bit about maybe maca that's been harvested improperly, or what the deal is with the contamination issues that sometimes occur?
It's not contamination. And that warning label you're speaking of only has to be on in California, because we produce our Macaccinos, we roast it here in California and sell it here in California. There's a proposition called California Proposition 65. It was developed in the 80s as an Air and Water Protection Act. And basically over the years, the lawyers here in California found loopholes and ways to use that act as a form of penalizing certain foods in imposing this kind of really crappy warning, which is really misleading. The warning is triggered because maca root is the highest grown food in the world. It grows in volcanic soils between 7,000 and 14,000 feet above sea level in the Andes. And all soil anywhere on the earth contains minute certain trace minerals in such minuscule quantities like lead or arsenic and all of those things, that in California, because it's grown in the soil and it's grown in volcanic soils, which have a lot of trace minerals in it, they made this superfood, because it's not just Macaccino, it's all maca products here in California, have to have that warning on it. But, there's more lead in a potato or in a carrot or in zucchini or broccoli or spinach. There's more lead in the water, the tap water we drink. And they can't impose that sticker on that. So they found loopholes and ways to do it to a completely 100% certified organic non-GMO products like maca. And it's just the absolute ridiculousness and crazy world that we live in. Because now in California, they go to the extreme. There's warning labels on your car. There's warning labels on buildings. The state of California recognizes that this building contains certain chemicals that have been known to cause cancer. It's just gotten ridiculously out of control because some lawyers found a way to make money off of that. But it has absolutely nothing to do with contamination. It has absolutely nothing to do with it being bad for you or anything. It's an absolutely 100% organic and very healthy product.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. Yeah, no, I always wondered when I saw that warning in Australia, and so I was just curious to ask someone who actually knew about maca.
Well, yeah, and that was the warning you saw in Australia? Because that would be surprising.
The warning was, it was not the same warning that you guys have to use in California, but it said something along the lines of the supplier that we've been going through, we don't trust their source or something along those lines. So well, I'm not exactly sure. Yeah, exactly.
Why they're selling it, I don't know. But I can tell you that I go down to Peru and I pick our batches of maca. I know the people and the places we get it. And this is really great because this is really important. So forget about all the great health and wellness that I spoke to you about, is that really also my biggest joy is about anything that has to do with conservation and preservation of our environment. Because once again, without the food, without the, the things that we ingest and an environment in which we can live healthfully in, we have no chance at evolving or expanding consciousness. So maca is the highest grown food in the world. It doesn't require any pesticides. Coffee is one of the most highly pesticide sprayed crops in the world. Macaccino, it takes 8.5 gallons of water to produce 1 cup of coffee from field to cup if the coffee is wet batched. Most coffee is wet batched, which means that they're using enormous quantities of water to clear away the organic mucilage to get to the coffee bean. All of that organic matter is then dumped into waterways, which contaminates and pollutes waterways, takes all the oxygen out of the water, and it uses massive amounts of water. Macaccino, maca root, doesn't require any water. It uses 32 ounces of water from field to cup to produce. You are saving massive quantities of water if you cut down your coffee intake. You are saving massive amounts of rainforest as they're now deforesting lots of rainforest to grow sun-grown coffee to meet the demand. We have 2 billion cups of coffee being served on this planet every single day. And you have to stop and think, what kind of resources is that requiring to produce that quantity of coffee bean? And it's massive quantities of water, it's massive quantities of water contamination, and it's massive loss of rainforest and habitat to a lot of species and a lot of other plant life that the rainforest has. So I am about health and wellness, and that means the health and wellness of the planet. And yeah, there's nothing that comes close to that, that I've discovered.
Yeah, those are really impressive numbers, and something that I saw too, you talking about in interviews, and glad you brought it up. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk just a bit about your business journey and starting the restaurant and then starting Macaccino. So you opened your restaurant at the height of the economic crisis in 2009.
That is the result of a meditation practice.
Oh no, you're scaring people. They're thinking, wait, I'm going to start making decisions like this.
Yeah. Well, let's hope so, because it's one of the best things I've ever done. So yeah, I listen to my intuition, and the ability to communicate and connect to our intuition, which everybody has, becomes stronger and easier when we have time to pause and connect to the breath. And I do that through meditation. So when I had my intuition saying I needed to get and create community for myself, and I wanted to call in partnership, that the best way it would be to get me kind of back into town. I was kind of living really an abstinent life away from the city and meditative lifestyle. It's kind of a monk. And I knew then, okay, if I'm going to have to create community and get back in the world, well, I need food that I can eat, and I want an environment in which I want to hang out in. And I had tons of restaurant experience. I never wanted to open a restaurant. I just wanted to create kind of a community gathering place that maybe had some food. I had books and crystals and things upstairs, but the food is so good. That's what grew, and that's what paid the bills. And sure enough, I had a restaurant. And out of that, I had a great story as to how roasted maca came into my life.
Well, you have to share.
I know. So after about 6 months of having the restaurant, this guy comes in with a long white beard. He's like 75 or whatever, long white hair. Looks like he just came off the mountaintop, carrying a little bag of roasted maca, because I didn't invent roasted maca. That's been thousands of years in Peru. And he said, "Oh, you'll love this. I just need $40 for a bus ticket. Why don't you give me $40 for this bag of roasted maca? You'll create a great drink from it." And that's how it started. I played with it. I added cacao, mesquite powder, cinnamon, nutmeg. I used this great plant-based creamer, and it's our best-selling drink for almost 7 years.
Did that guy ever come back?
No, never came back. That was all from what I believe, listening to my intuition. Because when we follow our intuition, we may not know how it's going to work out. When I opened up the restaurant, I didn't have enough money to pay the bills for the next month. So if people didn't start coming into the restaurant, and I didn't know how because I didn't have any money to do advertising or marketing or anything like that, I had to operate from trust, faith, and surrender. And I did not know. And then the day after I opened the restaurant, I mean, I went home and I fell to my knees and I was just crying until I started actually laughing because I just saw the drama of all of this. And I said, well, it's either going to work out or it won't. And I'll either grow from it, in all ways, or just grow from it from a emotional, spiritual standpoint. But sure enough, at that time in 2009, plant-based restaurants were very rare, and the vegan community rallied behind it. They loved it, and they were the ones who helped get the word out. And I didn't ask them, but I didn't have a Twitter account. I didn't have a Facebook account. I didn't know what any of that stuff was back in 2009. And I saw these people taking pictures at the table, and I'm like, why are they taking pictures of the food? And actually in LA, when I used to work in restaurants, people weren't allowed to take pictures in a restaurant because there's usually some celebrity or people don't want their picture taken. So I'm like, why do people think it's okay to take pictures? And they were blogging. They were, sharing the food. And that's how crazy I was. And it was. But everything opened up from me opening the restaurant. I found Macaccino. I met my wife. My life has absolutely transformed from saying yes. And I really suggest and really support all your listeners and everybody to trust that intuition, because nothing or nobody knows better than you, and that is true. It's a cliche, and it won't make sense to you. The mind cannot put it in a compartment where you're going to rationalize it into where you're going to feel safe. Most of the time, your intuition is asking you to take a leap of faith, to trust. And that's because that's where our growth and expansion happens. It works. It works. And even if the restaurant failed, the lessons and the growth that would have come out of that would have still been profound as well.
Have you had any setbacks where you've thought about throwing in the towel?
Sure. Yeah, so the recession, I opened at the height of the recession, not of my choice. I had been looking for places for years, and really the rents dropped, and I found this place that I could afford and all of that. But the whole first year of opening the restaurant, I mean, there would be hours that went by when nobody would come in. I did not know how I was going to keep this going. And yeah, for sure. And it was even more than a year. There's times then when, you start 1 month gets really great and the next month sucks. And it's like, it feels like you're going nowhere. It's not always a progressional chart where you're always seeing growth every month forever. There's so many variables. If LA sport teams are happening, the weather, the political situation, the economic situation, people do eating out all based on so many variables. So it's a challenging business, but it's a business that just demands you to keep showing up. It's like Groundhog Day. Keep showing up, be present, and trust.
How would you say that launching Macaccino has differed from your journey in starting the restaurant?
Well, the beautiful thing about Macaccino is that I have support out of just myself, and that's the first time ever. I've always started all my businesses with just me, and I opened the restaurant on some credit cards and a little bit of cash I had saved. Not a lot at all. Nobody does what I do. I didn't have a manager. I was going to do it all. It was crazy. I do not recommend anybody doing it the way I did it. But Macaccino has other investors that are aligned with the vision, and that's a huge step in growth for me because it's really allowing me to create a much bigger vision.
All right, well, I have some quickfire questions here to wrap up the interview, if you're up for them.
You have great questions, Andrea. Thank you so much for doing your research.
Oh, of course, yeah. All right, favorite food city?
My favorite food city is LA.
Why is that?
There are so many options here, to have a plant-based meal. So, you can go to an upscale plant-based meal at, like, a Crossroads here in LA and West Hollywood, and have things that are called calamari, but they're really made from, like, artichoke hearts, and they taste great, amazing. So that's really a treat, I haven't experienced that in too many other cities.
Who are your role models?
My role models, that's a very good question. I've met a lot of wonderful teachers here. A role model person, I could say, would be like somebody I met who held kind of meditation groups at his home was Bruce Joel Rubin, and he is a pretty well-known screenwriter in Hollywood. He wrote Ghost, and he wrote Jacob's Ladder and a whole bunch of different movies. And he was somebody that I was always really impressed who walked the talk and was very humble and really on a path of opening the heart. I love Richard Branson. Richard Branson says he won't invest or start any company that won't somehow better humanity. And I think he has done that just by being a fan of Virgin Airlines. Like, I remember the first time walking onto that plane and like seeing purple and like colors and cool music and real food. And I was like, this guy cares about human beings and enjoying their trip. It was cool. And his philanthropy, that he gives back.
Do you have a quote that you try to live your life by?
Well, there are many. I love a lot of Rumi stuff, and I love that saying between the differences of right. Between the differences of right and wrong, there is a field. I'll meet you there. I'm paraphrasing it. Be the change, of course. There's many. There are many, but yeah, things like that.
Okay.
It's presence. Yeah, that Rumi quote, that field is the connectivity to the oneness that I was talking about from heart-centered living. We experience this wide open field of beauty when we connect to that.
Do you have a spice that you think is underused that you wish more people would cook with?
What a great question. I love saffron. Always have had. Don't know why. I have a Persian wife, so maybe there's a connection there. But we have a lemon saffron cake, which is so amazing. So I love saffron. I love the color. I love the taste mixed in with stuff. I love saffron sauces and paella. So yeah, I love saffron.
And then the last question here, what was the last photo you took on your phone?
That's great. Let's see. I can tell you right now. Oh, yes. I was in Denver, and I took a picture of a beautiful, big, wide, expanded green park with a huge flock of geese on it.
Okay, great. Can we link to that in the show notes? Can we put that picture up?
Oh, I will. Yeah, that's so cool.
Great.
I'll send
Perfect.
it to you. Yeah.
All right, Aaron, thank you so much. This has been really great and a very enlightening conversation, so I really appreciate the time and your thoughtfulness. Can you let people know how to get in touch with you and what's next for you guys?
I sure will. Thank you so much for including me in your show, Andrea. You were a joy to speak to. They can always reach me through Macaccino.com, Macaccino.com. They can do, usually I see all of the Aaron at Macaccino.com, or you can do info at Macaccino.com. And on Facebook, we are on Macaccino. We have a Macaccino Facebook or social media. You can order on Amazon or on Macaccino.com as well.
Great. And we'll link to all of that in the show notes at wecoulddmakethat.com/Maca, Maca. Aaron,
yeah.
Thanks so much.
Andrea, it was my pleasure. Have a great rest of the day.
You too. Bye. As always, thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're enjoying it, I would be thrilled if you'd share it with a few friends this week. Maybe someone whose New Year's resolution was to listen to more podcasts, for example. Don't forget, you can check out the show notes at wecoulddmakethat.com/Maca. That's Maca. Until next time, have a good one.